Today we're talking all things WWE Hall of Fame because every year it seems like this is going to be so and so's year to get in, and for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. We're going to talk about the guys who should and gals who should be in the Hall of Fame and just aren't for whatever reason. Let's get into that. I have our friend of the show, my old wrestling buddy from over 30 years, Mike Mars, joining us. Mike, how are you, sir?
Hello. How you doing, man? What's going on?
It's good to have you back on. We're going to
Good to see
talk
you.
Hall of Fame. And I
Yeah.
threw this question on my Facebook and on my Instagram. So if you're not following me on there, make sure you follow on Facebook, follow on Instagram. I said, who are the people that you feel should be in the Hall of Fame? And the number one answer, and my number one answer, has always been Demolition.
I have them on my list. Definitely not my
So,
number one, though.
so me and Mike, I should preface this. We each made a list, and we're going to talk about each guy. But Demolition, I mean, think about it. How many other teams are in the Hall of Fame? Bushwhackers, Blackjacks, the Bella Twins,
Yeah.
the Valiant
Rightfully
Brothers,
deserved.
of course, LOD. Okay, but
Yeah.
how many of those teams have made an impact like Demolition? We're talking. Bill Eadie could be in there as the mass superstar by himself.
Right.
Barry
Sure.
Darso, love all his different gimmicks as well, but together, I mean, they left 3 WrestleManias in a row as tag team champions. I don't know why they aren't in the Hall of Fame, other than I believe they were part of the concussion lawsuit.
That's what I heard. Yeah. Bill 80. It's more Bill 80 than, Barry Darso from what I hear, but I don't know. Who knows? There could be a million different reasons. But I have a team on there also that, as far as I know, doesn't have any heat at all. And I think they should be in there too, which is the Midnight Express.
Sure, that
And
was on my
I mean,
list.
rock and roll finally got in. I think the Midnight should definitely 100% be in there.
Are you
So
talking Bobby and Dennis, Bobby and Stan, Bobby, Stan and Dennis, Bobby,
I
Stan,
would do
Dennis and
Bobby,
Jim,
Stan, Dennis, and I would leave Randy Rose out of it.
Jim Cornette as
I mean,
well?
I think Jim Cornette should go in. I have him on the list too, but I don't have him with the Midnights. I mean, obviously, you induct them as a group like they did. I think they did that with LOD and Ellering.
Right.
But I think Cornette's done so much without the Midnight, whereas Ellering was known just for his work with the Road Warriors. Cornette has superseded the Midnights and has done so many other. I mean, with Yokozuna, everything, that whole run with SummerSlam with Luger, um, and just with Smoky Mountain and everything else he's done, I think he deserves a spot in there by himself for sure.
And he was part of the developmental system forever.
Absolutely.
He trained guys like Cena, Batista, Orton, Benjamin, the Basham brothers, you
Rock,
know, all
Kane,
this Brock,
yeah,
Brock. How do you forget Brock? Yeah, of course.
yeah.
He was part of all that developmental. So yeah, I agree. That was the number two answer from Facebook and Instagram. Jim Cornette
Cornette.
and the
Okay.
Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express.
Okay.
And the Midnight Express. Yeah, you think it's more of an NWA thing? Because let's face it, it's not a WWE Hall of Fame. If it was,
No.
Abdullah the Butcher wouldn't be in it. A lot of these guys
Right.
wouldn't. It's more of a wrestling Hall of Fame. So yeah, I can't understand why
Yeah.
certain guys are in and Jim Cornette and the Midnight aren't.
Yeah. I don't know if it would be an NWA thing because I mean they have a lot of. I mean they have the Horsemen, they have Dusty. I mean they have all these guys from the NWA. I don't know what it is with the Midnights and Cornette, but it can't be he because they had Cornette introduce the rock and roll. You know,
Right.
so I think if there's any heat there, something like that never would have happened in the first place. But I mean, I guess we'll see now with Vince gone, and Triple H pretty much leading everything. If he does the right thing, and because let's face it, that is the right thing to do to put them in there. I mean, just if you go back and look at the gates that when the Midnights were main eventing, when they were doing 2 towns a night, sometimes those Midnights versus Rock and Roll were outdrawn Dusty and Flair, which says
Right.
a lot back in 85, 86, which would be unheard of today.
Right. Right. The number three answer again. Everyone that they mentioned, not everyone, most people were on my list as well. That people from Facebook and Instagram said, and it was one of my picks. And you and I talked about doing this episode 6 months ago, and I've had this list for a long time. I didn't just throw him on this week because he passed away. But how do you not have Sid in the
I
Hall of
have him
Fame?
on my list too. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was champ in both companies, and just for his size and the things he've accomplished, and I mean, you have to have him on there. He was back in that day where wrestlers looked like wrestlers, and he was one of the biggest out of all of them. And he could go, like a lot of these big guys, you throw them in there, and Pritchard says, then the bell rang. But
Right.
Sid, depending on who he's in, like he had some great matches with Sean. Like I know 99% of that was Sean, but I mean, he needed, a dance partner to do that with. And I think everything Sid did was 100% believable. I mean, especially like his stuff when he would just come out and just look around. I mean, the crowd would go crazy for it. I mean, it was just something in that period of time where you just couldn't deny he was a superstar.
He main evented 2 WrestleManias, one with Hulk Hogan and one with The Undertaker. I mean, that alone, how are you not in the Hall of Fame? He main evented
Sure.
2 dome shows, one of those Manias and the Royal Rumble with Shawn Michaels. When you put someone on top in a dome, you have to
Right.
believe they can sell tickets. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't know why Sid. He posted something before he passed on his Instagram saying he hopes now that Vince isn't there that he can get in. So maybe something happened with Vince and Sid. I don't know, but
Yeah.
Vince has had heat with a lot of guys and he let him in the Hall of Fame. For some reason, I don't know why Sid never got the nod.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens coming up this year with his passing, if they do the right thing. And, you know, but who knows? Because another one on my list that you thought after his passing would have went in was Bam Bam Bigelow,
He
you
was
know,
on my list too.
and he still has yet. And I don't know, I've never heard of anything as far as heat or anything with him. As far as I know, everybody always got along with him. So I don't know what that could. I mean, as far as for his day and age, for being able to do a moonsault and the cartwheel, the stuff he used to do. I mean, come on, they had him number 2 with Hogan, back in '86. Like it's he was undeniable back then. Like he should definitely have a spot in that Hall of Fame.
When he first came on the scene, he was so different. And like I watch the old house shows now. I watched him versus Hercules the other night. He was so different and such a big moving big man. And then fast forward a couple more years when
Yeah,
maybe he wasn't as agile, but he still could go. Think about the position you must be in for a company to trust you to wrestle Lawrence Taylor in the
true.
main event of WrestleMania. I mean,
Right,
you have to be held in a high regard. Who else could have pulled off that match on the
right.
roster? What are the
No.
heels were there? Bundy, Tatanka, Sean. I mean, Sean might have, but uh,
Yeah, but I
Tama,
think as far as Sean goes, like I don't think he was big enough to move LT around the way Bam Bam could if he wasn't in the right position for something.
right?
Bigelow's big enough where he's going to put you where he wants you,
Yeah,
whether you want to go there or not.
yeah. So right there, the main event of WrestleMania against a non-wrestler and did not have a bad match.
No,
Yeah, I don't
no,
know why Bam Bam's not in
yeah,
the Hall of Fame. Speaking
okay,
of the deceased, how is Miss Elizabeth not in the WWE Hall of Fame? How is she not
yeah,
there? I mean, think of our childhood. Think of
right,
think of our childhood. I think of Hulk Hogan, I think of Randy Savage, and I think of Miss Elizabeth. She
right.
was such a Macho Man does not get over like he did without having Miss Elizabeth there. He just
No,
doesn't.
no, that drew him so much heat, and just the chicken shit, cowardly heel, just constantly hiding behind her, yanking her, in front, and or her like when Hogan was about to ram him into the pole, she'd step in front of the pole, he'd stop. And no, I completely agree with you. She would work out as great as Heenan is, and Jimmy Hart. Like, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked. He needed someone like her to get over the way he did. Definitely. Not saying he
You
wouldn't have
think
gotten over, but it
right,
definitely added to the whole package.
right. Well, look at Savage when he wasn't with Elizabeth. Yeah, him and Sherry were amazing. Him by himself was great. WCW Savage was okay, but it was never that magic when he used to
Right,
come out the glitter robes, the
right.
music, and Miss Elizabeth. It has to
And
be
who's saying he wouldn't have got there without
right,
her in the first place? Because at least by that point he was already established, and you knew who he was,
right.
and you knew what he did. If that never happened, who knows if anybody would have cared?
You think it's because of the way she passed away? That's the only thing I could think of is she passed away because of a drug overdose.
I, China's in the Hall of Fame,
She's in as a part of a package.
but still, they didn't have to include her. They can do whatever they want. They rewrite history all the time. They change names.
Right.
They omit things that happened. I mean, look at their whole Intercontinental Championship, in Rio de Janeiro. It never happened, but they still stick by that story. I mean, they didn't have to put her in. They can do whatever they want. But I
So
don't think that there's so many guys that have had drug issues. Look at Scott Hall. He's in there twice, right? He's in
but
there
he
as
didn't
Razor. He's in there with the NWO.
but he didn't die of some little kid who's never heard of Miss Elizabeth is going to Google it and then say, "Hey, mommy, we're going to go see this girl tonight get inducted into the Hall of Fame. She died from a drug overdose." That's the only thing I could think of that's going to stop
Well, the
her from
same
being
thing
in.
with China and porn. What's worse for a little kid to Google? You know, I would much rather my kids being able to see someone died of a drug overdose, which is a real thing, especially in today's day and age, than them Googling like, oh, what's porn? Let me click this, and I don't know.
Like you don't
Your
know,
guess is as
like
good as I'm not saying you're
oh,
you're wrong. You
like you
probably
don't know
are,
what
but I'm
like
not
you don't
coming
know
out
what
and saying
porn is.
it.
Oh, what's this? Is now a good time to plug xvideos.com? Never mind.
Yeah,
I'll
that
edit
doesn't look like the real Mean Gene.
it. Okay, another big one that people would comment on Facebook and Instagram, and he's on my list too. Rick Martel. How is that man not
I've got
in
him
the
on
Hall of
there.
Fame? I
I've
mean,
got him on there too.
true AWA champion. He was a WWF champion, tag team champion, and a WWF tag team champion with Tito. Just his longevity, the fact that he could work with. He was that guy you could put in any position. We need a tag team babyface, throw Martel in there. We need a singles babyface. We need a singles heel. He was just that guy. He was that
Yeah,
Tito Santana, but Tito's been in the Hall of Fame. He was that type of
yeah.
guy. I don't know how Rick Martel's not in the Hall of Fame.
The only thing I can think of, Mike, is he doesn't want it. Like as far as I know, and too, he doesn't do conventions, he doesn't do
Right.
signings, he doesn't do any of that stuff. I mean, when's the last time you saw him? Like I know he used to work what 94, 95. We do indies,
Yep.
he'd be on. A great
Yeah.
guy too. I
Yeah.
mean, down to earth, funny, approachable, never had any type of ego. I mean, really nice guy. So again, I don't think Heat would have, and I think it's just he's done with the business. Some guys walk away, I'm out,
Yeah.
and I think he's one of them. Otherwise, he definitely should. I mean, he should be on the money he could be making on these conventions. Is
Oh yeah.
just doing, can you imagine if he was just doing the model thing and maybe selling little, you know, cans of
Mm-hmm.
arrogance or something?
Mm-hmm.
He'd clean up, especially since
Yeah.
he's one of the guys that nobody's ever seen. He would be a big draw.
It's so funny whenever you talk to a guy who's not in the Hall of Fame and you mention the Hall of Fame, their big thing is Hall of Fame, and then they get asked and they're right in. I think though
Yeah,
Martel, yeah, he is the guy to say no, it's not for me, and I'm sure he's been asked and he just said no. Yeah,
yeah.
that's the only thing I can think of.
Like Abdullah, then the second he accepts it, he sells his ring.
That's amazing. Who else has sold their ring before? Tammy did.
Tammy. Um, there's
Paul
been a
Bearer's
couple.
ring. I think Paul
Oh,
Bearer's ring went on eBay. Paul Bearer. I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
think so. I think his family sold it. I could be wrong. Well, maybe we'll just
You
move
think
on.
you bid it on it.
I'd love that. Who's next on your list?
Let's see. I'm going all over the place here. What about Dynamite Kid?
He
Like
was big too,
Baby
and
Boy's
people
in there. Just
mentioned
a bulldog. I mean, that just for the kind of things he did is so innovative. So, especially his stuff like Tiger Mask at the Garden.
him.
They're doing stuff in the early '80s that you wouldn't see on TV until what the late '90s when the Luchadors came into Nitro. I mean,
Yeah.
and just for his size to be able to accomplish what he did back then, Land of Giants. I think he was only what, like 5'8". I mean, so not only was he a smaller guy, but he was really on the short side too. I mean, back then to be under 6 feet and to have a belt, they were what champs a couple times. And I mean, and I think we all know the answer, as far as why he's not in. I just don't think, I think he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. and I think he's probably his own worst enemy, and I'm assuming that's why he's not in there. But
And if you
who knows?
notice that time, the 85, 86, the Hearts and the Bulldogs really did raise the work rate in the WWF territory back then. They really did.
Absolutely.
And they're very much responsible for a more faster style that you saw later on, the 87, 88, 89. It's because of guys like Dynamite Kid and Bret Hart.
Yeah,
Just, I mean, you watch Dynamite stuff in Calgary, you watch his stuff in Japan, and people rave about his WWF stuff, sure, but that's
yeah.
nothing compared to what he was
No, because
capable
the
of
time he
doing.
got to WWF, he was already beat up and hurt. But I would like to compare that, like what you going back to what you said, like the Hearts and the Bulldogs, like the matches they put on. Like you hear like the house shows back then, your typical house show match where the guy is, it's a 20-minute rest hold, and like maybe they'll do 3 spots, but those guys every night you go back watch this old stuff, on the
Yeah,
network, and
yeah,
they were going, they were putting in the time, they were putting in the work, and I'd like to correlate that to like maybe 10 years later when Sean and Hunter
yeah.
and Nash and all those guys were like, let's steal the show, let's put on, let's work, these guys are not doing anything, let's do, throw X-Pac in there too, like when they started, actually working their asses off. And I think you go back to the Bulldogs and Hearts, and they were probably, amongst the first guys. I'm not saying the first, but I would imagine amongst the first to go out there on a house show when there's no TV and just put on, as kids call a banger these days. So
Could you imagine Dynamite Kid 20, 25, 30 years later in the business? He would be WWE champion easily, easily.
absolutely,
Because
absolutely,
guys like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, if they were around in 1987, they wouldn't be getting any opportunities.
no,
Dynamite Kid was able to break through that mold, even back then at his
yeah.
size. Imagine him in NXT right now. Imagine him.
Can you
You,
imagine
you
him
know,
against Danielson like that?
yeah,
That'd be amazing.
yeah, yeah. You
So,
know what? I didn't even realize this guy wasn't in the Hall of Fame when I had him on. When I had him on my YouTube show, I I googled his accomplishments, and I'm like, where the hell is the Hall of Fame? And I didn't realize that Ken Patera is not in the Hall of Fame.
I
I
didn't know
thought for
that.
sure, how is Ken Patera not in the Hall of Fame? I mean,
Yeah,
just his just his Intercontinental Championship run. He was on top for a while there. He was a top heel,
yeah.
and when he
And
came
that was
back
a
from jail,
huge angle to when they cut Andre's hair. He was a part of that.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was
and
huge back then. Huge.
yeah,
you know.
and
And
when he
for
came back
Andre
to
to let you do that, he had to have a lot of respect for him too.
yeah,
You know,
he came back as a babyface. He was pushed for a year. I couldn't believe it. When I asked him about it, he goes, "I'm not losing any sleep over it." Like he doesn't seem phased.
but that's how a lot of those guys are. They just don't care,
Yeah, yeah,
and I believe it too. I believe it's not like just like I don't care, because anytime somebody says I don't care, they care
right,
a lot. But a
right.
lot of these guys are like, I don't give a shit. I believe them. Like
Yeah,
I don't. We know Ken personally, and he's just the type of guy. Like I really don't think he gives a shit. Like
yeah.
if he says he's not losing any sleep over, he's not losing any sleep over.
He left not in the best of terms with Vince, and that might have had to do with it for Vince. But yeah, again with Triple H. But Ken could be not a loose cannon, but Ken speaks his mind, and sometimes you don't want to give that someone like that a live microphone. But they did it with Scott Steiner. So I don't
Right.
know why they would. I don't know why they wouldn't do it. Ken Patera. I think Ken Patera. He's not talked about enough. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
I think so. I agree. Let's see. I got let's see here. I'm going for a obscure one. What about Ken Shamrock?
You think he had a Hall of Fame career?
I think he did.
Yeah. Okay.
Like that attitude era, just the things he did with like coming out of UFC. Like I know he did indies before that, but I thought he was a great. Well, like he could do one. Like they put him in there with Sean. Did he main event like in Your House or something with Sean,
Yeah.
like some pay-per-view?
Yeah.
Like again, going back to what you said, you're not going to main event a pay-per-view if the company isn't behind you. From what I
Yeah.
heard, and this is just hearsay or like podcast, whatever you hear, like Bruce Pritchard say or something, like he they wanted to resign, they wanted to put he wanted to go back and fight UFC, you know?
Right.
So if he stayed, I think they would have done a lot more with him. And he everything he did was legitimate, you know?
Yeah.
And you never saw anything Ken Patera or I'm sorry, Ken Shamrock and like, oh, that looked like shit. Oh, that looked, you know, he didn't
Right.
even touch me. And I don't know, he was what, IC champ, he was I
Mhm.
think European champ.
He's tag
Um
champ.
yeah, a phenomenal shape, legit tough guy. He could talk. They had him with that what the corporate ministry and you know just the different roles they had him from go to face to heel. And okay, now you're in this group, but you're not a top part of this group. You're like, I think anything he did, it worked. I
Right.
think. I mean, and you can say, did he have a Hall of Fame career? I'm comparing it to a lot of the guys they have in there now that I don't
Sure.
think had a Hall of Fame career. You
Right.
know, and I think he if you're in the WWE Hall of Fame, you've never held a major title, like say like Coco. Like honestly, I love
Mhm.
Coco. I don't have a bad word to say about him. And but why is he in the Hall of Fame? Like, it's because he was in during that golden era and he had the bird and you know got everybody up off their like what's your favorite Coco Beware match? I don't have one. None of
Right.
them stick out. And again, I know people will be like, oh, he's trash. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not saying anything bad. He could work his ass off. Great worker. Hall of Fame career? I don't think so.
Right. Right. I think maybe the reason why Shamrock's not there, maybe longevity. He didn't have a long career there, but okay,
That's
Ken
true.
Shamrock. That's that's so. But speaking of someone who had a long career, again, here's another guy that I had him on the podcast, and I would have bet my house that this guy was in the Hall of Fame. How is Tony Garea? And I get it. A lot of kids are watching right now saying, "Who the hell is Tony Garea?" How is Tony Garea not in the WWF Hall of Fame? He's a five-time tag team champions back when the tag team titles was a top position. He was with the company behind the scenes for 20 something years. You're talking over a 30-year run with the WWF. Tony Garea. Look him up, kids. He was tag champion with Rick Martel. He was tag champions with Larry Zbysko. He was tag champions with Dean Ho. Who else?
Who was the last guy you said?
Haystacks. Dean Ho.
Dean
Dean Ho.
Ho.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that name.
Well, there you go. Uh, you come here for all your wrestling education. I'm helping you out. He was tag team
Yeah.
champions with Haystacks Calhoun, but Tony was like the guy. Like, okay, you worked with so and so, then you worked with Tony, then you worked with Ivan or Chief, then you worked with Bruno. You know what I mean? He was like that upper
Yeah.
tier baby face,
Yeah.
and
I definitely
I
would
don't
have
know.
put him on. I would have assumed that he was already there.
Yeah,
You know, being one of Vince's like original guys and agents. You know, he goes in with like Rene Goulet and Blackjack Lanza and
right.
George Steele and those guys, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that
Well,
was definitely a good pick. And speak,
all,
I'll go now. Look, you just mentioned him. What about Ivan Koloff?
that was the last guy on my list.
Yeah,
How is
he's not
Ivan
there.
Koloff? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, former world champ. I mean, and not only that, what about all the stuff he did in Crockett? You know, he had a hot run with the Russians, and I don't think Nikita's in there, but I think maybe he should be too. I mean, just for his stuff with Magnum, that best of seven, and you know, then they took him like the number one heel. Then all of a sudden, you know, Magnum's hurt, so Dusty brings him in, and all of a sudden now he's a huge baby face. Like again, not a great worker, you know, and maybe it had something to do with longevity. I mean, you think about it, he was really what 85 to maybe 88. Then he left for a while. Then he came back. Like I don't know, but I mean, I definitely think Ivan and Nikita should both, you know, be in there.
Ivan Koloff beat Bruno Sammartino for the WWF Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah,
Period. Like that's where you put the period and you put him in the Hall of Fame. I don't know
yeah,
how
and
Ivan
that should
Koloff.
be all.
Yeah,
He shouldn't need anything after that. That
yeah,
alone should be able to get him in. You
yeah.
know,
And do you know there's like a what do they call it? I didn't even know that there's a legacy wing in the Hall of Fame. It's like where they
yeah,
induct people, but they don't induct them. It's like You're kind
Yeah,
of in, but you're not. Like,
yeah. I
who is
think
on?
they don't get introduced or a speech. It's probably like a blip across the screen or something. And
I was just on there before we hit record. Like Brickhouse Brown is in there, and like I think
yeah,
Stan Stasiak is in there. It's like, what's the point?
yeah.
What's the
It's
point?
there is none, especially when you don't have a physical Hall of Fame. It's
Yeah,
I mean they should definitely open up one of those. So
yeah.
who do you got next? I'm
Last
looking
on my
here at
list,
my list.
Owen Hart.
I have
You
him.
know, it's hard to talk about a legit Hall of Fame without Owen Hart. I mean, the man did so much in the business. He really did. I mean, from
Yeah,
Calgary to Japan to WWF to, I mean, Blue Blazer, awesome. New Foundation. I loved him and Jim Neidhart as a tag team. Coming back, being
yeah,
Brett's baby brother, and then the feud he had with Brett. And I mean, he had a 6 month run on the house shows where it was him and Brett for the title
yeah.
every single night. So main event at SummerSlam. You know what? Undertaker versus Undertaker main event at SummerSlam. But the runs he had, IC champion, the New Heart Foundation. I mean, it's obviously why he's not in there. You know, I
Even him and
understand
David.
him and
Him and
Davey.
David was doing great stuff.
Everything Owen touched was gold. Everything he touched was good.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Well, you know why? I mean, his it's the whole thing with his wife and family and not wanting anything to do, which I understand. But, I
Yeah,
mean, when it comes down to it, it's more for the fans, but I understand their point of view too. If my loved one was kind of forced to do something he wasn't comfortable doing and,
yeah,
cost him his life, I don't think I'd want him to be associated with that company ever again either. Honestly,
yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully I'm never in that position. So,
Right.
but what about, I have three like current names that I think should be there. Like I know I went over 10, but I just wanted to get at least 10 because I thought we would
Yeah.
have the same. But I'll throw all three out there. What about Jericho, Big Show, and Batista? None of them are in the Hall of Fame. And I did read Batista was supposed to go in a year or two ago, but some with filming a movie and
Mm-hmm.
scheduling conflicts prevented that. But I think those three should definitely. I mean, Jericho being the very first, what combined, what do they call it?
Undisputed champion.
Yeah, the first undisputed when he beat Rock and Austin, the same night. Like, I mean, and just his longevity.
Yeah.
I think he should definitely be there. But Batista, I mean, he should absolutely be in the Hall
I
of Fame.
don't. I don't think Dave has anything to worry about with his past in the company. All he's done, all the main events, all the titles, and being good friends with Triple H. I'm sure he's getting a spot in the Hall of Fame. You
I'm a
know,
little bit worried. I don't know. I lose sleep at night thinking about
we might start a GoFundMe for him one of these days.
it.
You know,
Yeah,
I don't think he's doing too well. Big
like
Show, is he still
I
with
won't sleep
AEW?
well. What about him?
Is Big Show still with AEW?
I have no idea.
That's
I would
probably why
imagine.
Big Show and Jericho
Yeah,
aren't in the Hall of Fame. That's the only reason. I
but
mean,
I
yeah, of
mean, you
course,
figured
historically.
they went into AEW's been around for what 5 years.
Hmm.
I mean, you figure Jericho's been around for close to 35. You figure he would have been in by before he even went to AEW. Yeah, I don't know,
I
but
like
yeah,
the
it's
idea of
definitely because of where they are now. Like they're not going to induct them now.
yeah. I like the idea of inducting guys like they inducted Rey Mysterio while he was still an active wrestler. I
You
like
do
that
and you
idea.
don't.
Like I do not too
Mhm.
much, but just those rare like now when Ray comes to the ring, it's WWE Hall of Famer. I think they
Right,
should do it this year with John Cena. You know, induct John Cena now. Why do it when he's 60 years old? Do it when he's now. While he looks like John Cena, and he'll still come out. He'll still come out
right.
because what? This is his last year.
Yeah,
This is his
yeah,
last year. Yeah. So come out. You know, the day after the Hall of Fame, come out to WrestleMania. The day after you got inducted into the Hall of Fame. There's not a bigger
there's
name.
another guy that I assumed was already in there. I even look him up to see if I just assumed, yeah, that's like a
Yeah.
definite that he's already there.
Yeah. You're not going to
So
find
that's
a bigger
shocking to
name
actually hear.
than John Cena ever. He's up
Yeah,
there. He's up there in elite waters. He's up there. So
absolutely.
yeah. I think
Yeah,
John
he's one of
Cena.
the untouchables.
I'd like to see him get inducted before he retires. That's my opinion.
Maybe it'll happen this year's Mania.
Yeah.
I think that's his very last match.
What about Vince McMahon?
I would
You
definitely
think
say yes, but I mean, after all the allegations that have come to pass, like you can't put somebody in there, you know, like that. That's just not good for business. Like they're always saying what's good for business. That's definitely not good for
they'll
business.
ever induct him?
I don't see how they could, in good conscience, if everything they're saying is true. That's just it's disgust. It's irrehens. What's I can't say it.
Reprehensible?
Irreprehensible.
Wait,
Um,
is that the word you're looking for?
irreprehensible. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
word I'm looking for. We'll
Okay.
go with
All
that.
right. Okay.
No,
Okay.
it's disgust. Like it's something like that. It's unforgivable. That is just you can't. You can't. I wouldn't if I was in charge. Like, there's no way I would even second guess it. No, it's you can't. You can't.
Before I get to the last name I want to talk about, is there anyone else on your list?
No, I shot out those last three. That was it.
Okay. Chris Benoit. I personally feel the man should never be mentioned in a public setting of any setting, whether it's wrestling or not, ever again for
Yeah,
the disgusting, despicable things. But when you put these posts up there, everyone still says, not everyone, a lot of people still say Chris Benoit. I don't think the
yeah,
man should ever be honored with any kind of accolades ever. I don't care how good of a German suplex the man gave. He
yeah,
murdered his wife and he murdered his child.
yeah,
Would you
exactly.
agree?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. If I'm not even on the fence with Vince, like I don't think it like a murderer. Yeah, no,
Right.
absolutely not. I don't think they should. I
Right.
agree with you. They should just completely erase him from the history books all over the place. And people that think that's wrong, it's your opinion. It's mine. And that's what an opinion is. I mean, it's not right. It's not wrong. It's how I feel. And I agree with you. I don't think he should ever get any kind of accolades or award or anything. He has nothing coming to him, as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed. I hope everyone enjoyed us talking about the Hall of Fame and who wasn't in. There's going to be people say, you forgot about so and so. You forgot about Frank Hackenschmidt and,
Yeah. How do
Sputnik
you not
Monroe.
mention
And
Bill and Randy Mulkey? All
yeah, we're going to get crapped on for this, but I thought we
right.
did a pretty good job. I think we covered a lot of the names. And yeah, again, this isn't the Baseball Hall of Fame. It doesn't go by hits and wins. It's a
Right.
wrestling Hall of Fame. It's entertainment. It's subjective. So
And that's a hard thing because what do you really have to base it on? I mean,
yeah,
guys are at their top spots not all the time because of their ability. It's because somebody in the office liked you
right,
and put you there.
right,
It's like one of the only sports that you can be town have all the talent in the world, but sometimes it doesn't matter at all. Like you said, with baseball or basketball or football, where you need to be an elite athlete and rise to the top. But again, wrestling subjective, and so is this list. So
yeah. So if you don't like it, yell at this guy down here. Awesome. Thanks, Mike. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully, people watched it, enjoyed it, and we'll come back soon with another topic to go over.
thanks for having me. And like I said,
Awesome.
we got to come up with like the enhancement talent, the job guys that should have a mention. That should be a wing in the Hall of Fame because so many of those guys, we're on the road with them for years, full time jobs, and the unsung heroes, and they're stuck with all right. We got this new guy, the Ultimate Warrior, who's green as goose shit, and he's going to hurt a lot of you. Mike
Yeah.
Sharp, you're going to work with him for the first 3 months.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit. But
Yeah.
but
I
I
like it.
think that could be a topic.
I like it.
So,
Awesome.
all right, Mike. Thanks for
Cool.
having me.
Thank you,
Talk
brother.
to you later, bud.
Talk to you
All
soon.
right, man.
Bye.
Bye bye.